So, rewinding a little bit, when I did 9 to 5 and Swimming with Sharks, I said, isn't it weird for me to be doing Swimming with Sharks without putting it up against Horrible Bosses?
Yeah.
This was the reason for that. We had 9 to 5, Swimming with Sharks, Office Space, and Horrible Bosses. And those could be paired up in almost any way.
Yeah, for sure.
And still be kind of relatively accurate. So this is what we decided to go with. We always knew we were going to do Horrible Bosses and something this weekend.
Yes.
Because of the release.
Correct.
And this is what we chose with. And I think, while I do think it probably would have been ideal to do Horrible Bosses with Swimming with Sharks, I think Swimming with Sharks was probably the best one to go with 9 to 5. 9 to 5 is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of these three. Because it's not exactly as compatible as the other three.
Okay.
And depending on what you're even... fuck it. This is what it is, deal with it. Double dose of Aniston, that's why we have these.
That'll work.
Okay. It was either going to be a double dose of Spacey or double dose of Aniston, so...
I know you probably preferred the first one.
No. Well, in these particular movies, she's not like in rom-com mode or anything, so at least we have that.
True. Especially on Horrible Bosses.
Yes.
Good God, no.
Anyway, so we're going to do our second set of Working in an Office Sucks movies.
Yes.
Since it's this weekend, let's go ahead and start with Horrible Bosses. Now, obviously, I was super, super psyched for this when it was coming out. Insanely so. Not just because Kevin Spacey's my favorite actor and he had finally had another movie that looked worthwhile, but after Fred Claus.
Oh, God.
But, no, he had stuff in between, like Casino Jack and stuff like that. I love the concept.
Yes.
Because I love black comedy. And a concept does not get blacker. Well, no, that's next week, but...
Yeah, no lie.
But, as far as black comedy, this is definitely a great setup. We have Jason Bateman, Charlie Day, and Jason Sudeikis. And they work with... they're best friends who work in 3 separate jobs. Who, well, best friends is kind of loose because... Apart from hanging out at the bar, and the shenanigans that take place in this movie, we don't really get a whole lot of friendship vibes from them, but...
That's true.
They kind of have that every man for himself type friendship. Which is funny in itself, so there's that. And they all 3 have a boss that makes them miserable. You have Bateman, who's desperately trying to get a promotion from Spacey, who hires himself instead, gives himself the promotion instead. Does the whole, instead of giving somebody else a new office, I'm just going to break the wall down and give myself one gigantic office. And then we have, and he's also, personally belittling as well, like the, I'm sorry, I had no idea you called your grandmother Gam Gam line. He's basically Buddy Ackerman here as well. That's basically.
It's a good way to put it.
But, if there's one thing Spacey gets criticized for, it's range isn't always there, but do you think I fucking care? So, and then we have Charlie Day, who's always kind of he's the one whose problems are kind of always pushed to the side, because his problem is that he's very, very happy with his new fiancée, who's this really happy-go-lucky, like she's straight from Pleasantville or something. And his boss is Jennifer Aniston, who is constantly trying to rape him. And she's a Tim Watley type dentist, where when you're under the gas, she'll pretty much violate you in any way she sees fit. And we know that she's a sex maniac because one of her very first lines is, "Do you ever watch that show Gossip Girl? I almost broke a nail last night fingering myself to that Penn Badgley guy."
I remember that line the first time I heard it.
So, and then there's Jason Sudeikis. Jason Sudeikis has a happy life because he's practically best friends with his boss, who is Donald Sutherland. He's basically a father figure type. I don't think I can ever talk about this character with a straight face, so just bear with me. Donald Sutherland's character has a son named Bobby.
Yes!
Who is a cokehead and loves prostitutes. And this is the very inspirationally cast Colin Farrell. Basically, having a, when Bale did his makeover for American Hustle, I'm pretty sure he looked at Colin Farrell in Horrible Bosses.
I can see that.
There's, like, the stomach, and there's the comb-over, and there's the beard. And he's just this absolutely hilariously despicable person. And he takes over the company when Donald Sutherland's heart spontaneously explodes in his chest while he's driving away from work. After a minute and a half of screen time. And then Bobby takes over the business, and I love those little moments. I didn't notice this, my brother pointed it out to me. There's this great little detail where his dad's name was, something Pellet. That's their last name. So the name plaque on the desk says his name and then Pellet. And of course, when Bobby Pellet takes over, when he's sitting behind the desk talking to Jason Sudeikis, you can see the name plaque. And he took a Sharpie and wrote Bobby on a piece of paper and then taped it over his dad's first name on the plaque.
Yeah.
And he just has that whole great saying, like, we're going to trim the fat around here. I want you to fire the fat people. His deliveries in this, they're completely unable to be imitated. They're just absolutely perfect. It's worth noting. Now, granted, these awards don't mean too much, especially since they were outed last year, but it's worth noting that Colin Farrell did receive a Satellite Award nomination for this. It would have been great if he'd at least gotten to the Globes or something. But, yes, I can't say enough things about how much Colin Farrell in this movie kills me. And he's not even in it that much. He's maybe got 5 minutes of screen time. But every single second that he has, he makes the most of. Up to and including his after-credits scene, when they're showing clips of them during the credits. There's apparently a deleted scene of him where he's all coked up and he goes to the grocery store. And it cuts off right before he says to the cashier, "Man, I will suck your dick." So yes, and now that we've had that, a lot of stuff in this movie works. Some stuff falls a little short. I'll get right to it immediately. This being a black comedy with that kind of setup. This movie, I understand where they were coming from with what they did and stuff like that, and you can only, do so much, I guess, if you want, for people to see your movie, I guess. But, in my personal opinion, this movie needed to be a lot darker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once they get to the plan, and realize that that's what they're going to do, the darkness is few and far between in this movie. Until we reach the point where, Harkin goes to Pellet's house and blows them away, thinking that he's banging Julie Bowen when he wasn't actually. It was a mess up with Jason Sudeikis stealing his phone and it ending up in Harkin's house. But regardless of all that, it's kind of another straightforward, raunchy, stuff like that. Like what you'd be expecting. Now, but the comedy still does work, even if it's not as dark as I think it could possibly be. This movie showed us what everybody in the world wanted to see, what it would be like if Charlie Day was on coke. Because he's already,
Yeah.
But the thing about, and, it does have a lot of clever jokes in there. I really love the montage when they, well, before I mention this, I guess we can go into another obvious character in this movie. A character named Motherfucker Jones, played by Jamie Foxx.
Yes.
Don't you love that there are 2 Oscar winners in this movie? One of which is playing a guy named Motherfucker Jones.
One of the greatest names ever.
And there's the whole joke where the Disneyan joke where his first name's actually Dean. based on... I actually know Dean Jones mainly as the villain in Beethoven, Dr. Varnick, but yeah, he was in all those Disney movies like The Love Bug and The Ugly Dachshund and Blackbeard's Ghost, I think he was in, all those. And he actually says the line, you know, I don't go by that Disney-ass name. I also love after his reveal when he's talking about why his name's Motherfucker. And it's not the reason. I mean, it is kind of funny. But my favorite thing about the scene where he's describing how he got his name was when we're cutting... We obviously think we know where he's going with this. And we keep cutting back and forth to him and the guys really, really quickly as the story builds. And when he says, I went in, and it cuts to them, and then he says, my mom was on the bed there. She was naked. And I took my hand, and I slipped it in. And right then we get this really quick cut of Jason Sudeikis going, Dean. Yeah. That's one of my favorite shots in the movie, and it lasts for a fraction of a second. It's just a shot of Jason Sudeikis going, Dean. And then I love that it's a really clever joke when they have to round up the money to pay Motherfucker Jones to be basically their consultant. He's never killed anybody. The only thing he went to prison for was filming Snowfalling on Cedars in the theater, then bootlegging it. In that joke where nobody knows that movie, but then he says, you got it for bootlegging an Ethan Hawke movie. So you do know the movie. The moment where they have to gather up all the money, and there's a whole montage of it where they're like at the ATM, and they're doing all this, and they're rounding it up in big envelopes, and then they've got the briefcase, and that moment where you realize, you know, the realism of when you see a briefcase full of money in a movie. They hand him the briefcase that has his money in it, and he opens it, and it's just one stack. That's a clever joke, but I do feel with the setup this really needed. I understand where they're coming from with the raunchy humor, especially Aniston's character, but if they had replaced a lot of the raunchy humor with more dark stuff, I think this movie could have been more, like, biting and more like, it would have come off more like a cult classic than what it's known for now is basically just another raunchy comedy.
Yeah.
And it's, because you can see, there are scenes in this movie that show potential greatness. Like some of the more clever jokes, and any time Colin Farrell is on screen. Or even when he's not on screen and we just see all the shit that's in his house. Like he's got that, you know, painting above his bed where it's him with nunchucks and it says Bobby in like Chinese writing. He owns a bear and a foosball table. Just all the, like they actually say, being in his house is like being inside the mind of an asshole.
Yeah.
It's lines like that that show that this movie was, you know, could have been destined for greatness, but it kind of took a more obvious approach and kind of lost, you know, some of that bite that it could have had. There is a really funny joke. There is a very funny cameo, and there's two great cameos. I know one that you're excited about. The first cameo is when they decide, you know, it's still kind of, you know, playing up the darkness of it, and they decide to hire a hitman, and they're looking in the men seeking men section, and they find wet work, and it says, you know, no children or political figures. It's like, oh yeah, this is definitely the guy we're looking for. And the guy shows up, and they're like, oh my god, he looks like James Bond. He's in like the black suit, and he's got a briefcase, and he's got, you know, the sunglasses at night. And it's Johan Gruffin.
Yeah, it is.
That's one of the most awesomely random cameos they could have possibly gotten. And naturally, you know where that joke leads, of course. I love Bateman's delivery of when he says, you know, well, I've been building this up all night. Do you mind if I use the restroom? And we can hear him going, and Bateman just kind of looks at them and says, yeah, do you hear that? That could have been on us. So, yes, it's still really, really funny, though. I was really kind of hoping more for that, you know, darkness of it. Like when they were, one of their inspirations was obviously Thermon from the Train. Because they're talking about how they're going to murder each other's bosses. And then, you know, they obviously say, you know, like, oh, that's like Strangers on a Train. And then Charlie Day says, oh man, I love Strangers on a Train, that movie with Danny DeVito. And Sudeikis corrects him and says, yeah, that, you know, that Hitchcock movie with Danny DeVito, and you're thinking of Thermon from the Train. I do think, without spelling it out, that joke could have been funnier. If it were me, I would have stopped it with, I think people could have gotten it enough if the joke ended with them saying strangers on a train and then Charlie Day just saying, oh yeah, with Danny DeVito. I think that would have been funny just right there. And the people that would have gotten it would have thought it was hilarious, and the other people would have thought it was just some random what the fuck. Probably a reference to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia because, you know.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But, you know, fine. Maybe they were afraid not enough people knew what throwing off from the train was, I guess. But yeah, if it had been, you know, yeah, that's my only complaint. I do think it's perfectly fine the way it is. Everybody's hilarious and at the top of their comedic game. I just think it should have been darker. That's all I'm saying. Our next movie is not near as dark, but it's definitely more biting as far as well, fuck it. You've all seen Office Space.
Yes.
This video is on the internet. Everybody on the internet has seen Office Space at least once.
At least once.
Yes. Naturally, we meet Peter Gibbons, who is Ron Livingston, who does not get the credit he deserves in a lot of things. He's always the guy... He was always the guy from Office Space, maybe the guy from Band of Brothers. Now he's going to be the guy from The Conjuring. All those things are okay, though. So, he also was one of the friends in Swingers. Which may be what Mike Judge saw him in, if I had to guess. Now here we have an interesting concept, where it's, apparently it's based off some, like, cartoon shorts that Mike Judge did for SNL or something.
Yeah.
I didn't see them, but apparently, by watching the opening credits it tells you that. Where Ron Livingston's character goes to work every day and he has to deal with multiple bosses. His main one being one of the most quoted comedic characters in recent memory.
Yes.
That would be Bill Lumbergh, played by Gary Cole. Who plays basically the ultimate stuffy, boring boss to perfection in a way that only Gary Cole could have. And he just leads this mundane existence because he has all these... You've known these people, you know, even in your life, even if you don't work in an office, where you have these people constantly approaching you, like, it's the TPS reports.
Yes.
How they have cover sheets now. And there was a memo sent out about that. And Peter knows this. He just didn't get around to it. He has the memo on his desk. He even says, no, I got the memo. It's right here. And Lumbergh walks away saying, oh, you didn't get the memo? I'll get you another copy. And then another boss comes up and says the exact same thing. And this is his existence forever. So much so that we don't even see his, like, the week. This movie starts on a Monday. Because it looks like somebody has a case of the Mondays. I think somebody get their ass kicked for saying something like that. We'll get to the genius of Dietrich Bader in a minute.
Yes.
And then we just kind of get this dissolve, and then suddenly it's Friday, because this is when he's kind of, you know... We're reaching the end of the week, because he's supposed to come in on Saturday, and yeah, on Sunday, too. That'd be great. So we just kind of, after that Monday, we just kind of dissolve into Friday, and we realize that just nothing has happened, and this is just his life. So... After that, he decides to see a hypnotherapist with his girlfriend who's cheating on him. And in an ingenious plot concept, he's hypnotized to just relax and not give a shit about anything. And Michael McShane is the hypnotist. And he says, when I snap my fingers, you'll come out of it. Well, the problem is before he can snap his fingers and snap Peter out of it, he keels over and dies of a heart attack. So Peter is stuck in it from now on. And this is how he's going to live his life and work life forever. And that's when we're introduced to the Bobs. There's so many things in this movie that are, like, referenced nowadays.
Yeah.
And of course, it turns out, thanks to his laid-back nature, Peter is promoted. And pretty much just does whatever the fuck he wants from then on. Michael Bolton and Samir, he brings along with him, too. And then it basically just turns into... I think the main draw for this movie was the fact that from this point on, this movie is basically like the ultimate fantasy for anybody that has ever worked in this area.
Oh, yeah.
Every single possible thing somebody has probably imagined doing in their office, with the exception of murder, that's for this movie, is something that Peter, Michael, or Samir do in this movie. And I think that's probably a large amount of its appeal to people, and why it's, become so popular. I don't know if... I have no idea. I remember when it came out, but I don't remember if it was successful then, or if it got successful later. Do you recall? You're old. Do you remember 1999?
That's a year I graduated from high school, actually. This movie, it became a cult favorite, actually, is what it was. I mean, I do remember people going to see it and thinking, hey, that's pretty cool, that's pretty funny, but it got bigger as it went on.
Now with the online age, there's pretty much no such thing as a cult movie now. You just have to go online and say, hey, here's a little scene movie that I like that nobody else has seen, and then
35 people said, hey, I've seen that.
Yeah.
It's like my favorite movie, man.
And then it's an easier way for people to learn about movies and so on. So yes,
yeah,
it's very rare we have cult movies anymore, but I guess this was one of them at the time.
Oh yeah,
and of course
sure.
it devolves into something even bigger when we get to their plot to basically bankrupt the place, and it's the plot devised by Michael Bolton because of he basically has lifted the plot from Superman 3.
Yep.
So now, as far as that, on the side of that, we'll go into the Aniston stuff in a minute, but the shorts that this movie came from, I believe were just called Milton.
Yeah.
And he was kind of the focus of them. Well, Mike Judge took Stephen Root, a fantastic actor that you've seen in a billion movies, most likely by the Coen brothers, and made this character to life. And what's great about this character is not only do we just kind of see him on and off, and he's always doing or saying something hilarious for all the wrong reasons, it's kind of ingenious the way they build this character up, given his importance later. Because he just kind of comes in and out of the story, and just keeps getting more and more fucked over as the movie progresses. And it just kind of gradually gets to this point where he's the one that ends up saving our heroes unwittingly. Because he's basically... He too, despite the fact that he is the way that he is, he too kind of has this built-up frustration towards Lumbergh and everything regarding this office. He's constantly getting moved to the point that it's driving him insane. Lumbergh took his stapler away. They put him in the basement with the cleaning supplies. I've always loved that moment where all the lights go out and we just see him sitting in the dark and we just hear, oh, well, that's the last straw.
Can't watch the birds anymore.
Yeah. He didn't get any of Lumbergh's birthday cake.
Nope.
The bitch beside him is to blame. Because she got the last one and did not pass it down. That was just all an elaborate plan to fuck Milton over. We all know this.
Very true.
So yes, I've always loved the way he just kind of gradually builds as a character. And we think he's nothing important. He's just there to be the butt of jokes. And then he fulfills his promise that he's been making through the whole movie. I will burn this building to the ground.
Like when he's sitting in the beach chair at the end of the movie. He's like, I said there was no salt, and there's salt on this.
So, now our other side plot is, one of the things he does is he's always wanted to ask out Aniston's character, but he's never had the balls to, and plus he had his girlfriend. So now that he's under this hypnosis, he just says, fuck it, meet me at Flingers. And something just immediately blossoms, because she immediately takes to his, laid-back personality. And she can relate to him because she also hates her job because of Mike Judge's little cameo.
Yes.
I don't know how many people actually notice that. You'd have to be kind of, blind if you know what Mike Judge looks like, but he is the manager at Chausey's who is telling her that 15 is the bare minimum, but do you want to go for the bare minimum, or do you want to go for 37 pieces of flair like Brian?
In a row?
And Brian is the biggest tool you have ever seen. If this were made a little later, he so would have been Jack McBrayer.
I totally agree.
So, Yes, I'm beginning to think Jack McBrayer based his whole personality on the character of Brian from Office Space.
And you've had that person wait on you before. The overexcited about his job guy that would do anything in the world to see you smile.
He's even like that in real life, we learn, because even when he's off the clock and in the parking lot, you two get a room, and he's still doing his bullshit. Now, the thing about the Aniston character is, I always thought the love story kind of felt a little shoehorned in. I mean, I get that she basically, you know, and they do take the easy way about it. Like, it's not like a building love story where you do have the misunderstanding and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, there's no building to the love story. It's just he takes her out for lunch, and then that's it. They're like, and then they've, like, been a couple for a while when we start to cut forward. The only trouble I have with Office Space, which this kind of has a lot to do with, is, it's, first off, it's a really witty, original approach to this kind of thing. To the point that it's been kind of played out since. Mm-hmm. But at the time, this was like, you know, the end-all be-all of this type of thing. Like this, you know, fantasies about how you wish your job was and stuff like that. And it's great. But I've always felt that in the last half hour or so, it kind of hits a dry, redundant spot a little bit. There's an awful lot of scenes of Peter, Samira, and Michael sitting around the apartment trying to figure out what they're going to do. And then you have the moment where there's the Lumbergh mix-up of names where we had to have some kind of conflict between him and Aniston's character that just kind of feels... Because the movie is only 89 minutes long. And that stuff kind of feels like it was kind of put in that last half hour because they realized they were reaching the finish line, but they had to have a little more runtime in there, and it... But that's only a little bit. It's not like, you know, overdone. And once again, the ending is a big payoff, so all is well and good. It's packed from beginning to end with memorable quotes.
Yes.
We were just talking about Diedrich Bader's lines a little bit ago.
Does that chick look like Anne?
Channel 9, it's the massage video again.
Massage video again.
Just that voice in general that he's doing.
Diedrich Bader is very underrated as a comedian.
There's the line you love using, they're not just going to jail, they're going to federal pound me in the ass prison. That line's brought up a couple of times. The judge, when he's having the nightmare about it. Yeah, Peter's nightmares are fun, too. I do love... The one thing that comes funny out of the Lumbergh problem is that nightmare he has about him doing her while saying, "Oh, hey, Peter, what's happening?"
They just wanted to see shirtless Gary Cole holding a coffee cup while he's pretending to do that.
Oh, God.
But the destruction of the printer after so many paper jams. So many people that have worked in an office totally understand that. And we actually had that thing back in the day about wanting to do that to the road sign. Just destroy that thing because it's caused so many problems.
That seems been parodied a lot, too.
Oh, yeah.
That is the sign of a great comedy. When, because this has happened with Airplane a lot. You know that you've made a great comedy when your scenes show up in other parodies. So...
It's true.
Because, you know, you can take something dramatic or, you know, something cheesy and, you know, make it into something as a parody, but to take what's already a comedy and what's already funny and parody it, that kind of makes you realize that you've made it as a comedy. So, yes. Of these two, it's a really tough call, but I'd say as far as being able to sustain the concept and how they handle their concept, I think Office Space slightly prevails.
Okay.
But, you know, both are great and hilarious. So, they make a nice double feature, too. So, yes.
So next week, I'll be gone. Actually, leave in 3 days, which is awesome. So... We actually have a Versus that's coming up next week, and we're going to go really dark next week, to say the least.
More so than we were counting on.
Yeah, no lie. And that's going to be what I'm going to tell you about next week's video. So, AJ, any parting words?
That's it.